Hi, this is Carl Leopson, Associate Professor at the University of Arizona. And when we talk about kids with disabilities or high incidence disabilities, we often segregate them into those labels or categories when we're describing the characteristics of those kids. But they're more like other kids than dislike other kids, and they're more like each other than they are not alike. Today we're going to talk about the general auditory, visual, and motor issues that can arise in kids with high incidence disabilities, and how those issues can affect performance in the classroom. So on today's agenda, by the time we're done, I hope that you could describe the term phonological awareness, its importance to learning tasks. Also, the term orthographic awareness, we're going to contrast that with phonological awareness. We're going to talk really briefly about gross and fine motor skills and their importance in learning tasks. And we'll talk some about general accommodations in the classroom, but we'll probably do that in other parts of the instruction that we do in this course. If you remember from a previous discussion, we looked at this model of cognition that comes from a really fine book by Eileen Raymond, which is called Learners with Mild Disabilities, A Characteristics Approach. I think it's in its 4th printing. And we talked about this model, and we talked about the structural components, which are the sensory register with its auditory and visual buffer, the immediate memory, and the long-term memory. And also the strategic control components, which are attention, perception, rehearsal, organization, and elaboration, and how those help mediate connections between the structural components. If you look back at the sensory register, you'll note that external stimuli comes in through an auditory buffer and a visual buffer. When there are problems with auditory processing and visual processing in that cognitive model, those issues can show up and do show up in classroom performance. And particularly, we're going to talk about in reading and writing. Motor skills can affect a wide range of elements within that cognitive model, and we'll talk briefly about that also. But it definitely can have an effect on those structural components. And we'll talk about those elements really more specifically again when we meet in another part of this lesson. But let's start with a distinction between phonology and orthography. Phonological awareness is the ability to attend to various aspects of the sound structure of speech. So it's auditory. Orthographic awareness is the ability to perceive and recall letters, letter strings, and words. So in terms of phonological awareness, even in reading or writing, think about when you're trying to craft a sentence and you play it over in your head. The fact that you're actually talking to yourself in your head, that you kind of use speech sounds for thought. that has a lot to do with phonological awareness and your ability to understand sounds, organize them, structure them, and use them. Orthographic awareness is when you're trying to picture that sentence. I know some of you, I know I do. Sometimes when I would be taking a test, I could remember back to the book reading and actually see the sentence on the page, see where it was, see the words. And also I have a pretty good sense of being able to look at a word and tell whether or not it's correct. Not everybody can do that. And the degree to which we lay along a continuum of being able to recall and perceive letters, letter strings, and words, that's orthographic awareness. Now, those of you who are in the speech sciences may hate this slide, but it's really not meant to articulate or to describe all of the elements of phonology. It's just meant to give us all a quick look at the fact that phonology is a complicated issue, and it's actually an issue that requires its own science and study. Phonemes are elements of speech sounds. Graphemes are representations of speech sounds. There are blends, like in the word blend, the B and the L, blah, two letters that run together to make a separate sound. Digraphs, where two letters are together and are sounded individually. There are voiced and unvoiced sounds. There are articulation issues. And I included the word diphthong just because it's a funny word. And it belongs in that area of speech sciences, speech and hearing sciences. Just understand that there are many elements to phonology, and it's not as simple as initial consonant sounds, as is often represented in education. How can you recognize kids who have problems with phonology? Well, they're going to be kids who have problems with sound-letter relationships. They're going to be kids who have an over-reliance on the context or the word in order to figure out what the word is. They're going to be kids who have difficulty sequencing sounds or putting them in an order, putting blends in an order or digraphs in an order, or keeping letters in order. They're going to be kids who add unnecessary sounds. And they're going to be kids who confuse one sound with another. Let's take an example. We are going to look at some a British training video, training teachers to use a phonics test that looks at non-word reading. Now, non-word reading is used often in the assessment of phonics because what researchers are trying to do in this case is remove words from context and simply see the degree to which a child can actually use their understanding of phonology to figure out what a word should sound like. So they don't even want kids to be able to recognize the words. They want to have kids sound words that are not words. This gets a lot of pushback from folks who say that that's not really part of a reading task, and so why should you even assess it? Certainly there are arguments for both sides, but understand that when you go out and work in schools and do assessment, and people provide you with assessment for kids, non-word reading is usually an important part of assessments. We'll just watch a few of these.
This video is for teachers undertaking the Year 1 phonics screening check. Teachers should watch this after they have read the Check Administrator's Guide, which includes a section on how to score the check. The video shows children reading out examples of the types of words and non-words that may be included in the check, and indicates if each response is correct. The video exemplifies issues that could arise in the check. Each check should be relatively simple to score. The child sounds out the letters and then correctly blends them to the non-word yed. Yed. She uses the wrong sound value for the vowel letter. Yed. Children do not have to sound out the letters before saying the word or non-word. Imp. There is a pause between each letter being sounded out, and therefore the non-word has not been blended sufficiently. Empt. The child has added an extra sound to the non-word. Shep. Ship. The child has confused the letter B with P and then incorrectly pronounced a real word, ship. Shep. The child has elongated the initial phoneme but given an acceptable blend. The child makes several attempts to sound out the letters, but eventually blends correctly.
So the notion here wasn't to teach you how to do this assessment. The notion here for us was really to take a look at some examples of kids interpreting non-words through their understanding of phonology. And you could see that there were some children who had some difficulties with phonology. So, when we assess, we often assess for specific difficulties, and we do that with a variety of tools. In a reading for this course, we're going to take a look at a range of tools that can be used to assess phonology. And when we teach specific skills related to specific difficulties. And you can teach those skills either in isolation or in context. But remember, the basis for good reading instruction is high quality children's literature that's meaningful for students and activities that are authentic. Right? And if you're going to teach skills in isolation, which I believe can sometimes be very useful for students, then you've got to bring it back to use within those authentic contexts, or you haven't really improved that child's ability to read. We went the wrong way on that slide. Let me back up. So what skills should we assess? Well, things like Dibbles, things like the Woodcock-Johnson, other assessments that we'll look at. They are going to assess things like rhyme recognition, the ability to produce rhyming words, phonemic matching, word counting, syllable counting, compound deletion, syllable blending, sound counting. You need to learn about these more specifically when you do assessments, but understand from our perspective that it's really important that you assess a range of skills that make up what we understand as a student's ability, or make up a student's phonological awareness. Let's see if my presentation gets us to the right place eventually. It didn't, so I'm going to have to hop it myself. Let's go to orthographic issues now. Remember, orthography has to do with the ability to perceive and recall letters, letter strings, and words. And it's associated with visual and the visual buffer and visual processing in our cognitive model. So when you see orthographic problems, you may see students have difficulty in forming symbols like letters or other symbols. Reversals, kind of the classic reversals of D's and B's, or flipping into P's from D's and B's. RAN difficulties, which is random automatic naming, which is another test that helps us understand processing or processing speed. And it's often a test that's included in phonological and orthographic testing for students to get a sense of their processing speed or their recall speed. So it's random automatic naming, often of letters, symbols, pictures. All right, how quickly can they call them out? How words look. My child just had me help him this morning with the spelling test he didn't do that well on. And their teacher has them do a spelling test where she gives them words spelled correctly and incorrectly, and they have to pick out the words that are spelled incorrectly and edit them and make them correct. And he told me he just isn't as good at that as he is at sounding out words. So reliance on phonology. You may have kids who, since they can't figure out or just picture in their head what the word should look like visually, they sound it out, and they may give you one of many possible spellings. Kids who omit word endings, kids who have a slow reading speed. It could be for a number of reasons, actually. And difficulty with exceptions to rules or words that have multiple spellings. Let's take a look at some examples. Distinguishing between ear and ear, or ear and ray, might be difficult for some kids, but it'd be easier than distinguishing between bread and beard. Because in ear and ray, the word definitely looks more different at the beginning and end, right? Beard and bread both start with a B, end with a D, have the same number of letters, and they are actually the same numbers, the same letters flipped around. Here's another example. Kids who have difficulty with orthography are going to find it tough to use a spell checker. The English language has many exceptions in spelling. So if you use the spell checker on this particular sentence, we increased our school cookie sales by 50%, you're not going to get an error. When it's clear that the word sales is not the word that we really wanted. I had a friend, an acquaintance, who had a tattoo, a Marine. He got a tattoo. He came back from a long night out in the town. Came back the next day with a tattoo that said, "Too tough to die." And I just didn't have the heart to tell him that he had 2 and 2 mixed up. Just goes to show you, you should be really careful about orthography, especially when you're having a long night out on the town. Let's look at some samples. Let's see if you can find phonologic and orthographic issues. What do you see here? First, you should see whether or not you can read it, and you probably can. This is a story about whether or not birds should be kept in cages. Does this look like a student? Does it look like a child who understands phonology? If you can read it fairly easily, it probably is a child who understands phonology. So words like be, that's a possible spelling of the word be, or kept, or cages. This is a child who probably has a reasonable understanding of phonology, but just can't seem to remember a lot of the conventions of orthography, or doesn't have a picture of those words in their head. One of the two. Let's look at another example. So this story is about trick-or-treating. Do you see any examples in here of phonologic problems? Do you see in the first line any examples of letters or sounds out of order? Look at the word night. How about the addition of unnecessary sounds? Oh, well, this is went. That's a possible spelling. Trick or treating. So this is a student who probably has a bit of both orthographic and phonologic issues. As you can see, the words like treat, phonologically, it's not as close to a possible spelling. You can take some time, and if you want to stop the video and look through the rest and look for some other examples. We're going to move on right now. So let's go back one more time to this issue of the model and the fact that motor issues and a student's motor skills could have a real effect on their ability to make use of their auditory and visual buffer, all right? To attend in their actual perception and in their ability to hold on to that information and rehearse, organize it, and elaborate on it to get it into their long-term memory. Let's take a look at what some of those motor skills issues might be. Basic elements of motor skills: there are gross motor skills, or large movements, and fine motor skills, fine movements like needle and thread. Generally, development moves from gross motor to fine motor. So younger kids don't have great fine motor skills and develop them slowly, and certainly develop them across a range or a scale. Impact in school is often on handwriting or in written expression, and less so in reading. Fine motor skills have a greater impact on academic skills, often, than gross motor. Let's take a look at some elements of handwriting then. So there are 3 ways to think about handwriting: legibility, rate, and sustainability. You've got to be able to understand what somebody's written. They have to be able to write quickly enough that they can keep up and perform tasks within a meaningful and useful length of time. And it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be sustainable so that they can, and persistent enough that they can create meaning over long periods, like a paragraph, like a couple pages, right? It's got to be sufficient for whatever level they're at and what the requirements are. Legibility, there are holistic measures of legibility, and the page number listed there is for a book by Dr. Nancy Mather. But there are a range of holistic measures. In general, with the samples we looked at, if you can give it to other people and have them rate the piece on a range of characteristics, right? And there is also the issue of just general understandability. You can hand a piece of writing to multiple people just to see if they're able to read it and understand it. Rate is usually measured in words per minute, although there are multiple ways that we can look at rate, because just words per minute isn't always important. It could be correct words per minute, correct word sequences. Dr. Nancy Mather, in her texts, also has some great measures for alternate ways to look at the production of handwriting, or the scoring of spelling and other writing tasks. And then sustainability, that just means being able to stick it out. So kids who have vitality problems are going to have a difficult time writing pieces by hand that are long enough that will fit their needs. One last thing to look at, and that is accommodations for motor skill problems. Certainly, having a note taker for some kids can be appropriate. Eliminating some copying, or determining when it's really important that somebody be able to and learn to copy. Possibly shortening assignments, but only shortening them to the degree that the student still gets the benefit and is able to learn from the assignment. And there are a variety of assistive technology tools that we'll talk about on another day in this course. Let's return to the agenda. So we talked about the term phonological awareness and orthographic awareness, and we looked at the model and noted how phonological awareness is associated with that visual process, with the auditory processing within that cognitive model, and orthographic awareness is associated with the visual processing. It's confusing unless you're looking at the model, isn't it? We also talked really briefly about fine and gross motor skills, and we're going to talk at a later date about using technology to assist in classroom tasks for kids who have problems with gross and fine motor skills. That's all I have for the presentation today. I'll see you in class, and we'll talk about these things just a little bit more.